Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Path to DevOps series. Today we have an important episode to discuss about because, drum roll, we're talking about a major milestone that we've just passed. And with this occasion, let me take you guys through a recap of what we've done so far. We started this Path to DevOps journey by introducing the Barbart stack, which is our stack of microservices we're using as an example. And we first learned how to compile and containerize and run these three applications together locally. That was basically our initial milestone. From that moment on, we focused on getting the three applications into Azure DevOps, creating pipelines for them, and eventually creating infrastructure in Azure in the form of a Kubernetes cluster and deploying these microservices to the cluster, making sure the services are accessible from the internet. And this is basically where we are now. That brings us to our present day. Now that we're back in the present, let's take a moment to applaud ourselves because we've put in a lot of work, pat ourselves on the back because, again, we've done a terrific job reaching this point. And now it's time to actually discuss business because this episode is all about improving what we've already done. We've now reached this amazing milestone, but I have to ask you guys, have we attained DevOps? Well, obviously not by a long shot anyway. At least in my opinion. But the point is, we've learned what our application needs and we've learned the processes, or at least the theory behind the processes, which will make our application go through its software development lifecycle and beyond up onto production in a faster and more repeatable way. And we have the feedback loop that DevOps always talks about. Moving forward and actually trying to reach this state of DevOps, I'm not going to throw theory at you or articles and just say, yeah, you have to do this. We're actually going to think about the solution in a logical manner by looking at gaps in our current solution and trying to fill those. Basically, the answer to the question, what are we missing at the moment? What can we improve right now? And without being modest, obviously, there's huge room for improvement, okay? So here's the basic list that I came up with and that we're going to focus on in our future episodes until our next big milestone, okay? So right now, this is what we have planned for, let's say, the next quarter or so. And we're talking first of all about how the build and the deploy pipeline are not correlated, okay? So the build pipeline will create your artifact, push it to your Docker Hub account, and then in order to deploy said artifact, you have to take the build number and actually run the deploy pipeline by giving it the build number. Now, usually you don't want to do that and decouple these two, or you might want to for business reasons, but in this specific example, I don't want to. Okay, I want to have the pipeline, the build pipeline and the deploy pipeline tied into one big pipeline that basically does everything, let's say. So our first step for improvement is to connect these together. Okay, when something gets built from the Git repo, it will actually create an artifact that will get deployed into our environment that we have right now. Next up on our agenda is the fact that we use a Kubernetes manifest for both backend and frontend, which means it's not very flexible, even though we have those tokens that we replace during the deploy pipeline. The problem is that if I wanted to add something for the backend only, it would also be reflected in the frontend, like we have right now the Spring credentials, the username, the password, and the URL. So we're going to try to move away from that and actually try to transition to a more modern means of deploying to Kubernetes, which is basically Helm, in my opinion. So we're going to sit a few sessions on Helm, learn about it, and learn how to use that. Our next candidate on the list of improvements can be no other but the fact that we're now exposing the front-end microservice through an IP address, and that's bad because we obviously want to have a human readable name, something like, I don't know, Instagram.com. You will remember that and you'll be able to access the website, but you will never remember 53.104.58.12. This is impossible for a human to remember. So we need to make sure that we also advertise our stack of microservices on a domain that's something human readable and easy to remember. Another issue that ties in with the previous one is the fact that we're advertising the HTTP protocol, which is unsecure. So basically when you're accessing a website and in your browser you don't see that green padlock next to the URL, it means the site is not secure. And I, for one, always try to avoid these types of websites. So it makes sense we're advertising a secure website. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to implement cert-manager in Kubernetes, and we're going to instrument that with Azure DNS. And I'll show you how in a future video, obviously. Moving forward, we have the ability to create a new environment in an easy and repeatable manner. And at this point, we're not quite there because we've created everything manually. And if someone from the business side of things would come to me today and say, hey, can you please create a new environment to test something on? I'll be like, yeah, that's like 2 weeks because I have to do everything manually and it will take time. So we want to make sure we adhere to some sort of standard, some sort of way to make this happen automatically. And we're going to introduce infrastructure as code in the shape and form of Terraform. One more thing we need to address is what happened if our stack of microservices would grow from 3 to 30. How long would it take for us to create all the necessary processes, pipelines, and to get everything deployed into the Kubernetes cluster? Well, the answer at the moment is I don't know, but possibly a lot of time and manual effort. So we need to make sure even this part of onboarding a new microservice is sort of automated and easy to do. And there's a process for it that we can follow. The last very important improvement that I want to mention on this list of to improve in the next period is the fact that we have no observability method implemented. It means we have no monitoring, we have no logging, and how will we ever know how our application is behaving if we're not always just looking at the microservices? Yeah, we want to have some automated systems in place which tell us what's happening with our stack. If something's going down, we want to get an alert of sorts. Okay, so this is basically something we're going to focus on toward the ends of this next period. Ooh, okay, this was a lot of talking, so I do hope I still have your attention, guys. If you've liked what we've done so far with the Path to DevOps series and you find this backlog of future items interesting, then please follow along and let's start going through them and improve our current infrastructure and stack of microservices to bring them to a place where it's extremely easy to deploy, onboard new applications, deploy new environments, and basically reach this state of DevOps that we've been talking about from the beginning of the series until now. Once again, thank you for your time of the day, and I wish you a great one wherever you are. Cheers.